Hi, my name is Slusher. I'm here for part 2 of my Knights of the Frozen Throne card review. So I'm going to do a little short intro since this is part 2. Basically, what's going on is I'm not a high-level Hearthstone player by any means. I just sort of play every once in a while, kind of like keeping quests on cooldown so I can use the free gold and stuff like that. In the seasons where I have really actually tried to play more, I usually get somewhere between rank 5 and rank 10, so definitely not a top level player. But I just kind of thought that with all the pro doing their reviews, it's kind of interesting to see if they were right or wrong later. So mostly I'm just kind of making this video for myself so I can watch it a couple of months from now to see how right or wrong I was about certain cards. Just sort of like a fun experiment. So if you want the longer intro, there is a longer intro on part 1, which is the Druid, Mage, and Hunter review. But for now, we'll just go with that intro, and then we'll move on with the review. So tonight, we're going to be starting with Paladin. And I just want to give credit to, I'm using the Hearthstone Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion guide, which is a really great page. It's got all of the new cards sorted by class and everything all on the same page. So that's what I'll be using to do the review, and if you want to see something similar, I recommend checking it out. So let's move on. So we'll start with the Paladin Death Knight card. The Paladin Death Knight card is equip a 5/3 lifesteal weapon for 9 mana. It also changes your hero power to be summon a 2/2 horseman, and if you get all 4 horsemen, you automatically win the game. It just ends the game. So the first thing I want to mention is that the whole getting 4 horsemen to end the game is pretty irrelevant. I mean, aside from the fact that it would be really hard and require a lot of setup to do, it's just not that important. Let's pretend for a minute that it doesn't exist, because it's very hard to do without some really convoluted combos or an opponent who's so far behind they just don't have a choice but to let you do it. So let's pretend for a second that doesn't exist. So let's say it's a battle cry, equip a 5/3 weapon that has lifesteal, and upgrade your hero power from 1/1s to 2/2s that have taunt once you have 2 on the board. Maybe 3. You could say they have taunt if you have 3 on the board. And that's really good. I mean, the hero power is pretty, don't need to explain it. It's better than a 1/1 to have a 2/2. So the hero power is clearly upgraded by double. You're getting full value out of your hero power. We talked about this yesterday, but hero powers, as they are when you start the game, are generally valued at about 1.5 mana worth of power. So they're not quite as strong as a 2 mana card, but they're stronger than a 1 mana card. The advantage, obviously, is it doesn't cost a card. So getting a 2/2 for 2 that doesn't cost a card is actually pretty good. It's just straight up better, and dudes in the late game are better because you just don't have enough cards or you don't want to overextend. You'll find yourself hitting the button a lot in the late game, which is when this card will be in play. So it's a really good card for those 2 reasons. First of all, the hero powers are straight up better, and then a 5/3 weapon with lifesteal is really good. It's 15 damage that you can do. It's 15 heal that you get. Really quite a good card. The only negative I would say about this card is that there is a lot of removal in the meta right now because weapons are so good right now, previous to the expansion coming out. So I don't really see any reason why it would go away, with the new warrior weapon being really good, which we'll review not in this video but in the next video, and with this card existing. So, and Medivh's not going anywhere either, so weapon removal is probably not going away, which is a big problem for this card. It's definitely not worth 9 mana to improve the hero power. But if you can get it off and use the 3 things, it's really good, and it's probably one of the best, if not the best, DK card if you can actually use the weapon. Alright, next is the legendary Bolvar Fireblood. This card is actually really good. Oh, so I guess I have to give it stars. So I think this is a 5-star card, or a 4-star card. We're doing a 1 through 4 system. 1 star means it's just basically garbage all the time. 2 means it's interesting and there's maybe there's like a funny interaction or like an interesting interaction that you can see to use it for, but it's maybe not practical. 3 stars means it's gonna be good in it's gonna be played in certain decks or good in certain decks, and 4 just means the class card, it means that every paladin deck will play it, or every rogue deck will. Basically, the class will play it. If there's a deck that's good for this class, they'll play it. And I think this is a 4-star card. When we get to the neutral cards, maybe I'll have to rephrase that a little bit. Like something like 75% of decks that are top tier will play it, or something like that. We'll get to that when we get there. But it's a little bit different of an explanation, obviously, with neutrals. Anyway, let's go on. Bolvar Fireblood is the Paladin Legendary. This Legendary is a 1/7 for 5 mana, gains 2 attack when anything loses Divine Shield. This itself has Divine Shield. So before it dies, it will have 3 attack. That is one thing that is for certain. So, a 3/7 for 5. Not amazing, but not terrible. It comes with Divine Shield on it, so technically speaking, you can it probably absorbs an extra, well, it definitely absorbs an extra attack, but it probably gets an extra damage. I think this card is actually fine as is. I mean to say, just losing its shield and then getting the 3 attack, and then it has 7 health, so even after absorbing attack, like a fireball doesn't even kill it, so it's pretty good in that sense. Like, it's pretty hard to kill a 7 health minion in one turn, especially one that you have to break the Divine Shield first on. So he probably gets 2 attacks with 3 damage. So that's really good. Or at least 1 attack with the 3 damage if they like totally focus him during their turn. But then he's absorbing a lot. So this tank card is super tanky, and I think for that reason it's pretty good as is. Obviously, if you can get additional Divine Shield removal over his own Divine Shield. I was thinking, if there's a deck where like you could play a card that gives Divine Shield to return his Divine Shield to him, like either a Hand of Protection or maybe the 2/2 Argent Protector you could cast on him. Potentially good. Those are not the best cards, so maybe not worth it, but if he gets up to 5 attack, this is a 5/7 for 5 with starting with Divine Shield. That's so good. Granted, he probably won't have the Divine Shield by the time he gets 5 attack, so I mean you could discount it in that way. But I just think this is a good card. I think you'll probably see it in anything. Oh, actually, I think you'll see it in all Paladin decks. I think it's a good long game card, and I actually also think it would be good in Aggro Paladin, because Aggro Paladin loves to play stuff like Argent Squires and Scarlet Crusaders, stuff with Divine Shields. Anyway, if there's a card that synergizes with it, like that just makes it better to play those types of cards, which Paladin already plays, because they can buff up Divine Shield minions. So yeah, I think it's actually really, and 5 mana is not that crazy for an aggro deck, so I think this is a great aggro card as well. So yeah, I definitely think any version of Paladin that exists will probably play this card. Maybe Control Hunter maybe Control Paladin, like super long game Paladin, like N'Zoth type stuff, would not play this because it's a little low value for that type of a deck. But I think that's the only kind of, I think any mid-range or early game Paladin would play this, and it's not bad in a long-term Paladin deck. It's just there are higher value cards that you could play. And it's 5 mana, which is not a strong mana. 5 mana is not a strong area for Paladin at the moment. Yeah, like Grime Street Enforcer is the other 5. I might be missing a couple because I don't have every card. Is that really the only other 5? Yeah, so there aren't other 5 minions that are very good for Paladin, so that alone makes them good. So maybe you will see him in even super heavy decks, but if there is a Paladin deck that doesn't include it, it'll be the heavier variety. Next card is called Blackguard. It is a 6 mana 3/9. Whenever your hero is healed, deal that much damage to a random enemy minion. So one thing I heard about this card that's really good is if you have a True Silver Champion equipped, and so the way True Silver Champion works is when you swing, you get healed for 2 and then you swing. So what I heard is if you attack a 2 or 1 health minion with this True Silver Champion, and this triggers and kills it, you get the heal, it kills the minion, and you keep the weapon durability. So this interaction is pretty risky if there's multiple things on the board, because doing 2 damage with True Silver is kind of a waste of the weapon, unless of course you don't have enough health to actually kill their bigger minions. But if they have 1 minion on the board, like if you're that lucky to have the Blackguard already in play and they have a 1 health minion, you can kill it with True Silver for free and heal yourself for 2. Pretty good combo. Realistic combo, probably not. Is this card good? I don't think so. The effect is definitely good, but there's a couple problems with it. First of all, it's random. Granted, anything in Hearthstone that like this, you can always sort of like play your cards in a certain order to make it not random. But realistically, like, what are you going to be healing yourself with? No one's playing Holy Light right now, and you probably won't still play Holy Light, although I guess you could if you had this card. That would be 6 damage for 2 mana. Is pretty dang good. But you'd have to be missing 6 health, so if you're not missing health, this is a dead card, and this is a pretty dead card. I mean, you can play it, but 3/9 for 6 mana is pretty bad. They'll probably make sure to kill it before damaging your face, so if you play this before you have any damage taken, you're probably not going to get any value out of it. So it's just not that good. It's just hard. The package is good. How hard is it to get the package off? It's pretty hard. But maybe we'll see play. I don't think it's worthless. I'll give it 2 stars because I think this effect in this health total is worth 6 mana, but I don't think you can make I don't think the effect is practical. Like I don't think you're gonna get the value from it in a real game. All right, next card is Light Sorrow, which is a 4 mana. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, gain +1 attack. So this card is actually probably really good in Aggro Paladin, because like we mentioned earlier, Aggro Paladin likes to play a lot of the early game Divine Shield type stuff, because it's really good for flooding the board and like protecting your flooded board, and also maintaining board control with weaker minions. So this could be really good. Aggro also, you really just don't care about your face as much. Like, taking damage to the face isn't a big deal as much as, like, what am I trying to say? So True Silver Champion is a 4/2. This is a 1/4, probably at least a 2/2. If you're playing this in your deck, I would assume that you have the ability to at least get it to a 2/4. 2/4 is really good for early game board control. Also, you really don't care about the heal on True Silver, is what I was trying to get at, but you don't care about face damage. So losing the heal from True Silver is not that big of a deal. Only having 2 attack but having 4 attacks is potentially better if you're trying to get like board control early for your flooding the board type aggro strategy. So like in a flood the board type aggressive paladin with buffs and lots of early game cards, I think this card actually will replace True Silver Champion. Yeah, it's worse at breaking taunts than True Silver Champion, because you'll probably still see the Out of My Jungle card a lot. The 4 mana taunt, summon a taunt. Where is Out of My Jungle? Stonehill Defender, that's his name. Where is he? Is he 3 mana? Am I losing my mind? Alright, this card's not going anywhere. And True Silver kills this, and Light Sorrow does not kill this. Unless you get really good card draw and get all your if you curve out with the right Divine Shield minions, yes. But realistically, no. It probably does not have 4 attacks. So True Silver is better versus this card, and this is going to continue to be a common card, you'll see. But all in all, I think Light Sorrow is a potential replacement, or maybe you'll just run all 4. Because weapons are pretty good in aggro decks, as Pirate Warrior has proven, so maybe they'll just run all 4. But I definitely think aggro, like flood the board with small minions to buff type Paladin, would consider playing this card. I'll give it 2 stars, because I don't necessarily think that'll be a good deck, but I think the card works in that deck. Alright, this is called Arrogant Crusader, a 5/2 for 4. This card is actually really good. Actually, it would fit the same type of deck we just talked about. This is a good aggro Paladin card. The reason why is because the 5/2 doesn't really matter that much. It's sort of like... It's just a really sticky card that does 5 damage. So 5 damage is really good. It gets through taunts and things like that. Tar Creeper or Stonehill Defender, which you'll see a lot of in anti-aggro decks. It can break through either of those. And then even if your opponent kills it with like a spell, you get a 2/2. You absorb a spell, which is good, and you get a 2/2 ghoul to replace it, which is good. Because aggro, you just want stuff out there. So it's a good card. Plus, the only thing I would say negatively about it, it does cost 4 mana, which isn't like... You're not hurting for 4 mana cards in Paladin, that's for sure. Because we're thinking that you're running either 2 of these or 2 of these, if not all 4. You're probably going to be running 2 of these. You're maybe running this, although I'm going to say probably not. But do you really need another 4-drop? I guess that's not so bad. If you're curving out around like 5, you could probably fit this in 2 on top of having even 2/2 and then 2 weapon. But maybe not. If anything, I think you'll cut the second weapon before you'll cut this card, though, because this card is quite good for aggro. Both because it has breaking through power, and your opponent is forced to kill it because they can't take 5 damage to the face every turn, which is exactly what it will do if they don't kill it. Alright, this card is a 3 mana 2/2 Battlecry draw minion with Divine Shield from your deck. This fits really well, again, into the deck we were talking about. So maybe this deck will be a thing, because it's got a lot of decent cards that support the game plan that we're talking about. So this card ensures that you curve out for the Divine Shield, either the Divine Shield weapon or for Bolvar. One of the two, because on turn 4 you're going to have at least 1 Divine Shield card in your hand. That means that you can play that on turn 4 and then Bolvar on turn 5, or you can play the weapon on turn 4. You can play the minion on turn 5, although by then you probably want to use at least 1 charge of the weapon already. I don't know if this card combos that well with the weapon, but it definitely combos well with Bolvar. However, I think because in the deck where you would use that weapon, you'll have Divine Shield minions. This is a 2/2 for 3 that draws a card, and it's good for that reason. You'll still run them together if you run them at all. If you run the weapon at all, you would still run both of them in that deck. The question is, I'm just simply saying that the combo of the two having both in your hand isn't necessarily awesome, but it's not bad either. I'll give this card... man, I want to give this card a 2-star again for the same reason that I gave this card a 2-star. But with 3 cards in a row that all fit that same archetype, I'm starting to think that maybe that's a deck that we'll see play. So maybe these deserve 3 stars, but we'll stick with 2. Because there just seems to be a lot of really good anti-aggro cards in this set. I mean, in Hearthstone, anti-aggro has always found a way, so... Or, I'm sorry, aggro itself has always found a way, so... Something will work that's aggro, that's for sure. Will it be this deck? Maybe. all of the cards we've looked at so far seem decent in that deck, so let's keep going. The next card is 2 mana, Desperate Stand spell. Give a minion Death Rattle, return this to life with 1 health. This card is a worse version of the Secret. Oh, I'm highlighting a mana level. Redemption, wherever it is. I guess the advantage is you can plan it. Although, really, Paladin Secrets, you can kind of, like, plan it also. Again, in Hearthstone, a lot of the random effects, if you just play your cards in the right order, you can pretty much ensure that what you want to happen will happen. So, Desperate Stand is nice because it can happen on your turn too, I guess. But costing a whole mana more is a lot. Basically, let's think about it this way. How good is 2 mana for a 1 health minion? I mean, the minion would have to be really good. It would probably have to have a battle cry that makes it worth it. Well, this would not have a battle cry, so it doesn't work. Second question, does it have a death rattle that would make it good enough? I mean, maybe on Tyrion this card is worth it? Maybe. I'm gonna go with this card is just not that good. Because Tyrion has taunt, so you can always just play Redemption after Tyrion is already in play. And unless they have a spell, or you play another card and ruin your own combo, they're gonna be forced to give you 2 Tyrions. So, just seems like a worse version of Redemption. The best combo for this card is a card that Redemption already combos with perfectly because of the fact that it has taunt. So there's really no reason to play this card. 2 mana for a 1 health minion is just not good. And that's exactly what you're getting if you can't get a battle cry. Alright, the next card is Chillberry Champion, 4 mana for a 3/2. This card has both charge and lifesteal. So, this card is... Is this card good or is this card bad? Well, Frostwolf is a 3/1 for 3 mana that has charge, which is probably the most comparable card. The reason why I say that is I don't see this card being played at mid-range. I don't see this card being played in heavy decks, like Super Control Paladin with N'Zoth and stuff. So when would you play this card? Pretty much in aggro. Is it better than a Frostwolf? I mean, do you care about the lifesteal if you're playing aggro? Not really. We sort of covered that already when we talked about True Silver and aggro. So, I just don't think this card's very good. It's also 4 mana, which again is a kind of a crowded slot for Paladin. I'm gonna say this card's a 1-star. I don't think you would play it even in aggro Paladin, which would want charge cards. There's just better charge cards out there. It's too slow, and the lifesteal is not... Or too slow. Slow is not the word. But 4 mana for 3 damage is not enough. 2 health is not enough. I mean, at that point, it might as well be 1 health. Because on turn 4, anything that can kill a 1 health, outside of like Mage Ping, anything that can kill this card, anything that can kill Frostwolf kills this card. The only time when that's not true is Mage versus Mage, or versus, I guess, technically Druid. In which case, you get the... It is strictly better, because you also get the 3 health back from the Druid hitting with his face. But I just don't think lifesteal... I don't think in an aggro deck you care about lifesteal. Unless aggro versus aggro comes back. Even then, you'd rather win the race than have lifesteal. Alright, the next card is a 2 mana Dark Conviction. Set of minions attack and health to 3. This seems to be a new Paladin thing. There was a wild card a couple... Keeper of Uldaman that had this, and it was really quite popular. It ended up being a pretty good Paladin card in a lot of Paladin decks. And so then they kind of kept this effect by adding when this got rotated out, they added Tareem, who was the legendary who sets everyone's health to 3/3. So setting a health to 3/3 seems to be like a paladin thing moving forward in Hearthstone. So the question is setting minions attack and health to 3 worth 2 mana? It's not terrible. For instance, if you have a Silverhand Recruit on the board, which is actually something you would do with Keeper of Oldham a lot, you can cast it on that to buff it up the next turn. So it's almost like having a 3/3 charge, because the Silverhand Recruit is already on the board. You can use it to heal cards. For instance, if you were playing this card, you could hit something with 1 attack, LOL, kill it, and then set it to 3/3. So then you healed it for 2, and also made it so it can actually trade with things, which is part of why this card is so bad. So it's kind of like a heal. It's kind of like a charge card, since you can put it on a Silverhand Recruit that's already, or any card that's already out. Or you can use it for removal. You can cast on really big cards to make it so you can kill them. This card is really questionable for me because it's not bad. 2 mana feels a little high for it. 2 mana for a 3/3 is not bad. So if you're healing a card, I think it's worth it. But 2 mana for a 3/3, and you're paying, you're getting a refund for the 1 mana because of the fact that you have to have a card on board. I mean, that's a pretty big. Having a card on board is a big ask. So I think it's only worth it in the situation where you're healing a card. I think otherwise it's not that good because you're not really getting a ton of attack out of it. So then the question has to be asked, how good is it of a removal? It seems like it's actually pretty decent removal. 3 damage is not a lot to ask. So you can cast this, for instance, on a really big minion and then hit it with one of your weapons. Either the new weapon, if it's been charged up twice, or you can hit it with a True Silver once and kill it. So this could maybe be good in mid-range Paladin. Maybe it could be good in aggro Paladin even. This is one where me just not being good makes it hard, because this card is on the edge of being good and being bad. I'm gonna go with. Well, I rated all the other aggro cards as 2s because I don't think aggro is a card or gonna be a great deck. Although maybe, because there seems to be a lot of tools here. And I definitely think this card is worse than those cards. But I also think it might see some play, because it's flexible. It can be used in both aggro and long-term decks if it ends up being considered a good card. So while I do think it's worse than the other aggro cards that I rated 2 just because I think aggro has a little ways to go, I'm going to also give this a 2, even though I think it's slightly worse, because it's more flexible. It can definitely be played in any Paladin deck if it is good. I just don't think it's just slightly too expensive. But I'm really on the fence about it, that's for sure. This could easily be one that I'm wrong about. Alright, this card is a 1/1 for 1 with Taunt and Divine Shield. This card is really great for the Divine Shield early game deck that we've been talking about this whole time. Goes great with the weapon, goes great with the card that draws a card, goes great with Bolvar. It has Taunt. So if you play this with Bolvar, they were forced to give Bolvar 3 attack before removing his Divine Shield, unless of course they expend a spell on it. In which case, I mean, let's be honest, Mage is going to be a bad matchup for this deck in general, because it's one of the easiest classes for dealing with Divine Shield. But let's move on from that for a second. I think this is a great card in that deck. So again, man, we've reviewed 4 cards that I think are great in that deck. So if that deck ends up being a thing, and it seems to be getting tools for it, then this is a great card, but I'm gonna give this card 3 stars because I think this could even see play just as an early game protect / extend the game type of card. I think you can play it mid-range paladin just as a game starter. It's annoying. It has to be hit twice. I'm gonna give this 3 stars. I think it's flexible and it's also good. So I'll give it 3 stars because I think it's as good as the other Divine Shield cards we've looked at. Plus it's a little more flexible. It can be played in mid-range. So we'll give this one 3 stars. It's even not really terrible in the late game. I mean, it's not good, but it has Divine Shield, so it takes 2 hits. So it's annoying to deal with. Alright, so we're going to go to Priest. Alright, so Priest, the first card is the Priest DK card. This is destroy all minions with 5 attack or more. This card is got a pretty good battle cry. One of the questions with all the DK cards is, well, I'm going to be playing this probably on a turn where I can't play anything else. So how can I stabilize? Or is it too big of a tempo loss where I can't stabilize? Like, this is the question, is if the card is playable. So, with this card, because it destroys all 5 attack or more minions, it sort of stabilizes the board a little bit for you. Now, granted, you were losing your heal. So if there are a lot of small minions on the board, normally with Priest you'd say, well, if you get rid of the big minions, you can absorb some damage from the small ones. It's not a big deal. Priest has a lot of healing. So you're losing your hero power heal. But I mean, you still have stuff available to you, like Priest of the Feast, Binding Heal. Although Binding Heal is not usually run as a card, it's normally something that you get off of Lyra, if at all. But I mean, it's in the event where this is a good deck and people are finding, well, this stabilizes because it gets rid of the 5 attack minions, but I'm having trouble stabilizing from the damage I took from the little minions on this turn. I mean, you could just throw Binding Heal in. Unlikely, but it's an option available to you. So this card's pretty good. If you destroy 1 card, it's 3 mana for the hero power change. If you destroy 2 cards, the mana is through the value is through the roof. So it's really good in that situation. In fact, I would say any amount of, if you had 2 deaths in your hand and there were 2 big minions and a series small of little ones, and you did not have a Dragonfire potion in your hand, or a Dragonfire potion did not deal with the big minions, you would probably death the 2 big minions for that turn, heal yourself, which you can't do here, but let's just say, and then you would Dragonfire the next turn. Basically, you would deal with the big threats first, even in that situation. So this card is pretty good. If it gets 2, the value is pretty great. And the hero power is a definite upgrade for the late game, which this is an 8 mana card, so you'll be in the late game. The hero power is, it turns it into deal 2 damage. So it's like Fire Blast that does 2 damage. And anytime you cast a spell, I believe. Uh-oh, we might have to look that one up. Okay, anytime you play a card, you refresh the hero power. So, really good. The thing that's being talked about the most is playing this with the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan Priest Legendary, which makes it so that if you play that card, your hero power costs 0 for the rest of the game, which would mean any card that you play from the point on after you play this card for the rest of the game, basically it's every time you play a card you get 2 damage to anything, which is really, really strong. So that combo is definitely something that people will be looking to try. It's strong enough that I don't see why it wouldn't work. I definitely think this will be a good deck. And that's one of those cards that requires you to have one of, so you could also run Kazakus in that deck, which is a good card. So I think Kazakus Priest with the hero power cost 0 card. I don't think I have that card. I don't. Okay. With the hero power cost 0 card and with the Kazakus and this card, I think that's going to be a tier 1 deck. So, and I think this will be a linchpin in that deck. So I'll give this card 4 stars. I think it's a great card. Not much else to say about it. I guess technically speaking, this card does not deserve 4 stars, because would you play this card in Inner Fire Priest? Probably not. Will Inner Fire Priest still be a thing? I mean, I don't see why it couldn't be. I just think this is a great card, and I think it'll be the linchpin in one of the best decks in the expansion. So we'll give it 4 stars, even though I don't think Inner Fire Priest will become garbage. I think it'll still be decent. Although most people would call that deck a tier 2 deck now, and it's not getting any better. So this potentially could be a tier 1 deck. So we'll give it 4 stars. All right. The next card is the Priest Legendary, 7 mana for a 4/6 Archbishop Benedictus. This card is really, really cool from a power level perspective. It's actually funny how much power this card has in it. This card is really powerful in the sense of how much it does. It does so much. That being said, it's not a great card. Shuffle a copy of your opponent's deck into your deck is not necessarily a good effect. It's definitely a fun effect, and you'll probably see a lot of this card, people playing it for the fun of it. I can't see any reason why putting their deck into your deck would help you win the game, though. It's just going to muddy your deck with cards that don't fit your game plan, and lower your chances of drawing the cards you need to win the game. In an extreme fatigue situation, sure, this is great, but you actually make it harder to get to fatigue with this. I don't mean in the sense that you're delaying your own fatigue. I mean, you're making it harder to draw the priest cards that let you delay the game. So it just makes it harder to draw your priest cards. I guess if you're playing against another priest, you're getting good cards because you're drawing the same deck. But I mean, sure, that's probably the best use of it. Just not a good card. Very fun card. It's really cool they made this card, but it's just not very good. I'm going to give this deck a 1 star. It is for the memes only. I'd be not disappointed to be wrong, but I just don't see how I would be. We'll see. Next card is a 9 mana 4/8 Taunt with Lifesteal, Obsidian Statue, Death Rattle, destroy a random enemy minion. This card is actually really good. You'll probably see it in any long game deck. You'll probably see this card. I mean, what doesn't it do? It probably heals you for at least 4, and it also provides a board clear eventually. I wonder if this card will ever see. There's some cards in this expansion that make me wonder if Silence will ever become a thing. Right now, no one plays Silence because it's really expensive for how good it is, but this would be a card worth silencing, that's for sure. But for now, Silence is not a thing, so this card is really good. Will this card make Quest Priest playable? It's hard to say. This card is obviously a good card that you'd put in your deck. So you could put 2 in. The problem is, I think most long game priests are going to be Kazakus priests. So 2 of a card that costs 9 mana is kind of hard to run. So how many 7 Death Rattle cards? Still seems hard. I mean, you could easily run these 2 cards. Crystalline Oracle is not a bad card. Talon Shellraiser is not a great card, but I mean, if you're trying to get the Priest quest, you could run it. I think this card is just kind of bad. It's a 4/3 for 4. I mean, it does give you does draw a card. If you're running a 1-of deck, it's maybe okay to run it. So let's say you run 1 of each. That's still only 4. So you'd have to find 3 more neutral Death Rattles to run. And your deck would be really heavy. Because you're going to have the Raza, the Unchained, the legendary that gets you the 0 hero power. That's like half the reason why you're going one-ofs. You're going to have Kazakus. Well, Kazakus is 4, so that's not that heavy. That's not heavy at all. But you're going to have Raza. You're going to have the DK card. You're going to have at least one Obsidian statue. And then, if you're running 7 quality lifesteals, you're probably going to want to run N'Zoth. Is that too heavy? I don't... You know, that doesn't actually sound that heavy when you say it. Because you would probably still run Priest of the Feast in that deck. But you can only run. You'd probably run Lyra. Would you run Onyx Bishop? Maybe. I mean, this high rolls if it draws any. Or do you have to play or summon a Death Rattle? Summon. So if you draw any Death Rattle, that's a high roll with Onyx Bishop. Because you can't run 2 operatives if you're running one-ofs. Although running Alchemist maybe is a good idea if you're running one-ofs. Just because you're going to take more damage in early game since it'll be less consistent. There's also a 2-mana Priest card, I think, that you could run so that you can run 1 Elemental. Yeah, this card. So you could run this card as a one-off with this, although this card's not particularly great. Playing it by itself is not ideal. Although it's not super understated, and it only has to go off once to be overstated. Will you run Quest in Heavy Priest? I think the answer to that question is probably not, but maybe. I think it's more likely that there'll be 2 Priest decks, one that runs the quest and one that doesn't. Because playing one-ofs forces you to play bad Death Rattles, whereas playing 2-ofs allows you to play good Death Rattles. And it makes N'Zoth better, because you're getting 2 Obsidian statues with N'Zoth, and you're getting 2 things that aren't Tortel and Shellraiser with N'Zoth. Well, I guess you probably have to run that card. It's like the only Priest Death Rattle besides... You don't have to run Shifting Shade, which is a plus. That card's not very good. So yeah, I think there'll be... I don't think Kazakus Priest will run the quest. I think that either one deck will just be way better than the other and it'll see more play and the other one won't see any play. Or they'll both be like really good. Kind of like how Miracle Rogue and Quest Rogue were considered top tier at the same time. You know, some people will like one, some people will like the other. I just feel like if you're going to run the quest, you want to run N'Zoth. And if you want to run N'Zoth, you want to run 2 of your good Death Rattles, because, yeah, you want to get good Death Rattles. That's the whole point of N'Zoth. So, I just feel like running 1-ofs in a N'Zoth deck doesn't make any sense. So, maybe someone will run a crazy hybrid that does everything, and has the quest, and has Kazakus, and has Raza, and has Lyra, and everything. More likely, what's going to happen is there'll be both decks. And one will probably be better, significantly better than the other, but maybe they'll both be really good. Hard to say. So, back to business, because we got way off topic there. Obsidian Statue is a really good card. I think it's a 4-star card, because it's a 4-star card, because you know what? There isn't going to be an aggro priest. I mean, I guess Silence Priest is kind of aggro-ish, but really any priest deck if a priest deck is tier 1, it's going to be a long game deck. And in a long game deck, you're going to want this card. This is a 4-star card. Embrace Darkness. Choose an enemy minion at the start of your turn. Gain control of it. This card is. I've heard both good things and bad things about this card. I'm gonna call it a bad card. I think this is a 1-star card. I'm not gonna go too far into it, but I'm just gonna say it's mind control for 3 less mana, or I'm sorry, 4 less mana. But it's super slow, and they can do what they want with that card for a turn before you get it. So the problem with that is they're gonna try to damage it or ruin it in some way. If it's a big minion, that means that the only way for them not to damage it and make it worse for you is for you to not play anything or not have anything on board. In which case, they'll just go face, and they won't... Or, I'm sorry, they'll just trade with it, kill your minion, and make it weak so they're able to kill it easily next turn. So it's just not good in that way. And then if it's a big enough card to be worth spending 6 mana to steal, and you don't put anything on the board, I imagine that's probably going to hurt you really badly. Because that's got to be a really good minion for them to have the next turn. So either you have something on the board and they'll take a super value trade by damaging 2 of your minions at once, the same way that you're trying to do with Thought Steal and stuff like... Or, I'm sorry, with Potion of Madness and Shadow Vision, stuff like that. Is that what that card is called? Man, no one's played that card in so long. Shadow Madness, that's what I was thinking of. But basically, they're going to 2-for-1 trade you, because they're going to trade it with your minion with your future minion. Or you have nothing on board, and if it's a card worth spending 6 mana to get, would you really want to let them have it for a turn uncontested? I would say probably not. So I think this card sucks. I'm going to give it a 1-star, and we're going to move on. Shadow Essence, summon a 5/5 copy of a random minion in your deck. This card also seems quite bad. So generally, when you summon a copy of a card, or when you make a copy of a card, you want it to have text. So basically, let me say that in a better way. So summon a 5/5 copy of a random card. So you're getting an understated card, so it needs to do something. It can't battle cry, so it will be slow. It's probably not a charge minion because you're playing priest. Although I guess it could be. You could play a Stone Tusk Boar, and a 5/5 Stone Tusk Boar for 6 is not awful. It's not that great, but it's not awful. It's hard to combo, because something that comes to mind is, well, what if it summoned Lyra? Well, I don't believe this would trigger Lyra, because he would come into play after you played this. So you've already spent 6 mana. You have at best 4 mana to play with afterwards. 5/5 Lyra is worse than Lyra himself. So, just not that good. If this does see play, it would be in Quest Priest, because it could potentially summon a Death Rattle card, which you would get full value on, because the Death Rattle would come with it. And potentially, like a 5/5 Shifting Shade is actually a pretty good card. A 5/5 Tutorian Shell Razor is an okay card. So it kind of depends. But in general, I don't think this will see play even in that deck. So I'm going to give it 1 star. I think it's a bad card, but if it does end up working, that's how it'll work. It'll be Quest Priest, and the dream, quote-unquote, will be to summon a Death Rattle card, preferably one of the ones with a good Death Rattle, either an Obsidian statue or a Shifting Shade. A Shifting Shade, actually, you're paying on the normal version of the card, you're paying for the Death Rattle because the stats suck. So in this case, you'd be, I mean, it is understated, so you're still paying for the Death Rattle. But, you know, it's a pretty good Death Rattle. It's almost worth paying the extra mana for here, and you're paying more than 1 mana here. So potentially, if you get Shifting Shade, pretty good value card. Obsidian statue, pretty good. So, I don't think it will be in the N'Zoth deck, but if there was a N'Zoth Quest Priest, this card, if this card saw play, that's where it would be. But I'm going to give it 1 star because I don't think it would even be in that deck. Alright, next card is Devour Mind. 5 mana. Copy 3 cards in your opponent's deck and add them to your hand. So basically, it's just a bigger version of Thoughtsteal. I mean, 5 mana, draw 3 cards is a playable card. It sees play in Druid, although that card's a little more flexible. You don't usually choose the mana crystals with that card. Actually, very rarely do you choose the mana crystals. So it's essentially played as a 5 mana, draw 3 cards. 3 mana, draw 2 cards. 5 mana, draw 3 cards seems to be like the way that the mana cost is supposed to go on the type of a thing. So it's, this card you would say is correctly priced. You're not overpaying or underpaying for it. The question is, can you fit it in? Can you find time to play without dying? I find when I play Thoughtsteal, that's often the problem, is I have a hard time finding a window to fit it in. But that I don't think is a problem with the card so much as a problem with my play. So this card's maybe playable. I'm going to say that Thoughtsteal is a little more flexible just because it's lower mana. If a deck played Thoughtsteal, I don't think it would play both. I think it would play one of the two. And I think Thoughtsteal is just a more flexible card because it costs less. Although this is obviously a better late game card because it costs more. Maybe in Kazakus Priest, because you're running one-ofs, you're going to have lower quality cards. Maybe this will be a card because it is a quality card in the sense of the cost is worth what you're getting. So sometimes that can be hard to find when you're running one-ofs. Finding cards that are worth what they cost when you're running one-ofs is half the challenge. So maybe this card's pretty good in that situation. So I'll say this is a maybe in Kazakus Priest. It's a 100% include in meme steal the other person's cards with the new legendary plus every card. You'll get like the new legendary, 2 of these guys, 2 of the shades, 2 of these, 2 Thoughtsteals, 2 what's the 3 mana one called? 2 Glimmer Roots, 2 of the 5 mana Draconoid Operatives. So definitely it'd be really good in that deck. I don't think that deck's a real deck, but it'd be good. Definitely you would include it in that thing. Kind of a fun deck. Definitely a fun deck to play. An actually good deck, probably not. So I think the most likely high tier use of this will be in Kazakus Priest if they're just looking for another 5 mana card to include, which, again, when you're making a Kazakus deck, sometimes you just run out of good cards. So this is a quality card. It's just a matter of does it fit? So maybe. Next card, 4 mana spell, Eternal Servitude. Discover a friendly minion that died this game. Summon it. This card is really good. I think it's a discover card, so it's in theory easy to not low roll it. Again, the quest is summon a minion, so this can be used in Quest Priest if that ends up being a thing. It also works. With the new legendary DK Priest. It would work in Kazakus Priest because again, you're going to be looking for. You're just going to be looking for good card quality at some point with that deck. So this card has good enough card quality that it's good. Because it's Discover, you have a pretty strong chance to get to not low roll. Unless you would never play this on curve. That's the only thing that's maybe bad about it. Because you're definitely going to low roll then. But in a longer game where you've played enough minions that your odds are high that you're going to be able to, at least one of the 3 is going to be 5 or more, you're getting value. So it's a good card in that situation, and both the Death Rattle N'Zoth Priest and the DK Priest with Kazakus will want this card. So yeah, I think this is great with the Quest Priest because you can get another Death Rattle back. You summon a card. It's not a Battle Cry card. It's a Death Rattle card, so you get the full value of the card. Also, it counts towards the quest. Also, it counts towards the N'Zoth summon at the end of the game. This is a good card. I think it'll be in both of those. I think it'll definitely be in N'Zoth because it synchronizes well with the stuff that deck wants to do. And again, Kazakus, because you have to run one-offs, it runs into a situation where you're just trying to run high-quality cards at some point, and this is a high-quality card. And you're going to the late game when your 3 choices, at least one of them is going to be higher than 4 mana. So, this is I'm going to say this is a 4-star card, actually. I think you'll probably play it in every Priest deck. Except for Inner Fire Priest, if that's still a thing. But I think that's going to fall to meme tier. Because the other Priests will be better. By enough that it'll be considered meme tier. Even if it's like tier 2. Alright, next card is a 3-mana 3/3 with Lifesteal. My impression from the cards I've reviewed so far is that Blizzard has valued Lifesteal too high. That's all I really need to say about this card. I don't think this card is good. It's a 1-star card. Stats aren't good enough for a 3-mana. Lifesteal is just not that relevant, especially for Priest, especially on a card with 3 health. I think that's a big mistake that Blizzard made, or of the cards I reviewed today, because my memory is not that, it's pretty short term, but going off the cards I reviewed today, both the Lifesteal cards we looked at, the big problem is the health is too low. Like, you think, oh, well, like, Lifesteal, you want to do a lot of damage, because you get, like, if this was a 5 damage card, that's 5 heal per swing, and I think, no, not really. My thing is, I want to be able to trade with it, like, a couple times, so that I get the heal a couple times. So, like, if this was a 2/4, it'd still be understated and probably not worth playing, but, like, it'd be a better card. Because you could probably definitely swing twice with it. If you played it on curve. That's 4 health instead of 3 health. It's just a better card. And it's still not a good card. It's a better card that you still wouldn't play. So this card sucks, but I think that's one thing I've noticed, at least about everything other than Obsidian Statue, is that all the lifesteal cards have more, either the same damage as health, or more damage than health, which is like not what I would want at all. This card sucks. 1 star. Spirit Lash is the next card. 2 mana, deal 1 damage to all minions. Lifesteal, which means that for every minion hit, you'll heal 1 life. A high roll with this card is obviously really good. A low roll is pretty irrelevant. I don't foresee a lot of 1 mana cards being played. This card would probably be good against Divine Shield Paladin if that ends up being a thing. Well, actually, would it be good? Because you wouldn't get the health back since you're breaking Divine Shields. I don't think this card is very good. The only thing that makes me want to say that maybe I'm wrong is Maelstrom Portal is good. Is getting a 1 mana minion better than getting... Because 1 mana minions actually are very bad generally. They're not, like, amazing. Like 1/1s or 1/2s. Rarely they're 2/1s. Or 2/2s, I guess. Yeah, I just think that's better. And Shaman has like a easier... Getting spell power for them is like they don't have to even include it in their deck and they can potentially get spell power. Which is a big part of what makes this card good, is that totem. So this is a strictly worse Maelstrom Portal, and I think Maelstrom Portal, if you take away the ability to hero power and potentially get 2 damage, is already questionable. And then the lifesteal effect is definitely worse than the minion. I don't think this card is very good. I'm gonna give it a 1 star. I think it sucks. But Maelstrom Portal, I didn't think was good either. I'll be honest about that. So maybe it'll see play. But I think Maelstrom Portal, when I think about it hard enough, is just strictly better for the minions, better than the lifesteal, and the ability to press the totem button and get 2 damages. It's just better. It makes it playable. Like, would Shamans play Maelstrom Portal if they couldn't high roll a totem? I think they might not. Maybe I'm wrong. I was wrong about the card in general, so maybe. But we're giving this 1 star. Shadow Ascendant, at the end of your turn, give another random friendly minion +1/+1. I actually think this card is pretty good. It only has hit once to be overstated, which isn't asking a ton. The only problem with it is it's not super good on curve, but it's not bad on curve. So what do I mean? I mean, if you have a Northshire Cleric on board, this card is sick. 2/4 Northshire Cleric is so good. That would be just a really good... I don't really even need to talk about it. That would just be a really good play. If you played Northshire Cleric and played this, you're in good shape. Now, follow-up statement. That's the only situation where this card is good on turn 2. So, how good is this card? It's not bad. It's definitely something you could play later. Like, on turn 4, turn 5, playing this plus another 2-cost card, or this plus a 3-cost card. And it's at the end of your turn, so you can even do stuff like give it health. You could play this card first, and it gives... So these work together really well. So Cabal Talon Priest is like, it's a really good card to include in your deck. It's a 3/4. So even in the situations where you're unlucky and you have to play this straight up, it's still good, unlike the Shadow Ascendant. However, one thing that these cards do well together is because this is at the end of your turn, you can play this card first, follow it up with the Cabal Talon Priest so that you get the value out of both. So these two cards like each other for that reason. So I think it's like consistent enough that you could play it, even though the only time that it's good on turn 1 is with Northshire Cleric. So it's very inconsistent on curve, unlike Radiant Elemental, where you can just throw that down. You definitely would not replace Radiant Elemental, so it would be a deck where you can afford to have a lighter late game and a heavier early game. So maybe like you would run it in either Inner Fire Priest or maybe Silence Priest. And then you would also probably run it in Kazakus Priest because you can only one Radiant Elemental. So those are situations. I think it's a good card. Not an amazing card. Won't be in every Priest deck, so we'll give it 3 stars. For N'Zoth Priest. You could potentially run it in N'Zoth Priest. Because really in N'Zoth Priest, you're not going to be running a lot of heavy cards. Like... You're not looking to run a bunch of big minions other than the statue and N'Zoth himself. Everything else is like going to be between 1 and 6 probably. So you could run those combos that we talked about of Northshire followed by this guy, or like the turn 4 you can play this guy with a Radiant Elemental, or obviously the dream play is running this guy with Cabal on turn 5. Or you could run this guy with Glimmerroot if you're running a Steel Cards deck. Yeah, I think this card is good enough to play. The only time it'll really suck is when you just can't afford to not play something. When you need to contest the board on turn 2, this card doesn't do a whole lot for you if you're already behind on board. So if you get a bad draw, this card's pretty bad. So we'll give it 3 stars. I like the card. I think it's good. I think it'll see play in 2 decks. Maybe more. Maybe less. But probably... I think Kazakus Priest definitely plays this card because, again, the value is going to go down on your cards when you're running one-ofs. So this definitely fits the threshold of value in a one-of deck. And I think it hits the threshold for value in Inner Fire Priest because you're playing a lot of 1 through 5 minions, so this card is really good in that situation. Next, we're going to go to Rogue. Alright, so the Rogue DK is Valera the Hollow. Battle Cry gains stealth until your next turn. And then the hero power is you have a card added to your deck at the start of every turn, and it mimics whatever you just played. So it works kind of like I don't really have a good explanation for it because there's nothing in Hearthstone that matches this. But basically, if you play a coin, the card becomes a coin. If you play Deadly Poison, the card becomes Deadly Poison, and it keeps going. So it's not like you can't combo, like you can't play a weapon, and then what am I trying to say? You can't play Sinister Strike, and then poison your weapon, and then try to Sinister Strike. I don't know why you would do that. It just changes every time. It's, to my understanding, you only get one per turn, so you can't. It doesn't give you, like, if you have a ton of 1-mana spells, it doesn't give you double the cards. It's once per turn, I believe. So this hero power, this DK is maybe the worst DK. I don't personally see it. I like the idea behind it. I don't think it's worth 9 mana is the problem. Because it's not good enough for 9 mana. The stealth for a turn makes sense. It makes it so you don't die the turn you play it. And then that's where it ends. And it's on turn 9, so yes, you don't die that turn, but they get to play something that costs 9 mana that you're not doing anything about. And then the power that you gain from having this doesn't really do anything. So, in my mind, the only way this card is good is if there is a 10 mana combo that is exclusive to having the mirror card that can kill them from at least like 20 health. Probably 30 health to be a good card, to be honest. So, does that combo exist? I don't think so. Not unless you can play a Malagos that they don't remove for some reason. Maybe if this card stealth you and your entire side of the board, it would be good. You would still have to find a way to get something to stick for a turn since it costs 9. But like if you could get a Malagos to stick for one turn, not likely, but if you could play this the next turn, and then they're just dead on the next turn. You pretty much don't have to have anything. You would only need like 2 cards, because you could mirror the one that does more damage. So like at a minimum you're getting... What's the worst combo you could have? Sinister Strike maybe? So 3 Sinister Strikes does... with Malagos does 24 damage. That's a decent combo. And that's only 3 mana, so you'd still have a couple mana to play with if you had other cards in your hand. Or I mean, your board's health, so you can swing with Malagos, so... Yeah, so that's a 29 damage combo, unless they have a Taunt. So yeah, I mean, I'm really making the card way better than it is by giving you a stealth Malagos, so that's just... that just goes to show how bad this card is that I'm trying to say how good it would be if you also got a stealth Malagos, which is like... that's actually a really dumb way to judge a card, so let's just go ahead and say this card's 1 star. It's really bad. It just doesn't provide enough power. I mean, the dream is that it gives you... what's the best card it could possibly give you? Another Eviscerate, probably? I mean, you have to go face, right? What are you doing if you're not going face? You could play 2 of Leroy's, and then 1 Cold Blood. That's 12. 16 damage. 16 damage? That's really just not that much damage for a 1-turn combo that takes the setup of a 9 mana card that does nothing. Dude, this card is really bad. I don't know what else to say. Maybe I'm missing the point, but if you're playing nothing on turn 9, you pretty much need to kill him the next turn. Because you're a rogue. So you have no healing. You lose the race, straight up, period. Every time. This card costs too much mana. This cool effect is cool, but it's not that strong. So it needs to cost like 5 or 6 mana. Why doesn't it cost like 5 or 6 mana? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is way too strong. But at 9 mana, it's definitely too weak. What's the mana amount that it's good at, but not overpowered? I'm not sure. But I feel like for like 5 or 6 mana, this card would actually still be reasonable. Yeah, I actually think it would be reasonable. The only problem is if it costs less than 9 mana, then those Malagos combos I was talking about, those are legit combos, and that's scary. So, that's the problem. If you cost less than 9 mana, you can combo with Malagos, and that is scary. But this card costs 9 mana, so it sucks. 1 star. Next card is Lillian Voss. Lillian Voss is the new legendary for Rogue. It is a 4 mana 4/5, so the stats are good regardless of whether the wording is good. Let's find out what the wording says. Battle cry, replace spells in your hand with random spells from your other class. This card is potentially good eventually, but it's not good right now. So what does that mean? This card is good if control rogue ever is a thing. This card is good because what this card can do is it can cycle out rogue cards, which are mostly rogue spells are mostly low cost early game spells. So trading your spells for their spells is probably an upgrade. Like later in the game. So like now if this card was a 9 mana that was like statted well for 9 mana, this would be a really good card. At 4 mana, it's a good card because it's a 4/5, which is good. It's not great. It's a Chill Wind Yeti. So it's, borderline playable, not great unless the wording is great. And the wording is okay. But it's not... Let me rephrase that. The wording is great. Like turn 7, 8, and 9. The wording on turn 4, it's okay. It's potentially bad on turn 4. So you can't really play this card on curve, which is, I think, a problem with this card. Because the best thing about it is the stats. And if you're playing it later than on curve, the stats really are less meaningful. So, yeah. The question is, what would you play with it? And that really would depend on the board state. With Rogue, the way that Rogue works, it's not like a combo in of itself. So you wouldn't run this like as a combo because you don't even know what spells you're going to get with it. So it's hard to really predict how it will play out when you play it on like turn 7, 8, or 9. But this is a card that you wouldn't want to play until then. So it has good enough stats for it's not underpriced stat-wise, but the value of the battle cry isn't good for the 4 mana turn, which kind of makes the stats worse, if that makes sense. Unless you're running a minion-heavy deck, which currently rogues don't, although, yeah, I just don't think this card's... I'm going to give it 2 stars. It's a good card in a vacuum, because it has good enough stats, and the effect is good. But unfortunately, it would have to be run in a minion-heavy deck, because the only way to play this is not on turn 4, is to play it late game, which means that because the spells are going to be randomly changed, you're going to want to play it with a minion. Unfortunately, because like the best rogue spells have combo effects, you can't even say, oh, well, you could eviscerate a minion to get board control. Eviscerate his minion, play this card. On turn 8, Now all your early game spells are gone, and you have later game spells, in theory, potentially. And you have a 4/5 on the board, which is not that bad. You can't do that because Eviscerate first sucks. You'd want to play this card and then Eviscerate. So I think this card would be playable now if it was at the end of turn. Replace the spells in your hand with random spells from the other class. Because that would also make it flexible where like if you got like bad spells, you just don't play them. And you protect this card and then they transform again next turn. I think that would make this card interesting at 4 mana. I think the other way to make this card good is if it just costed and was effectively statted at 7 or 8 mana. However, at 4 mana, having effective stats isn't good enough because playing this on 4 mana isn't good. Playing it late game won't be good unless there's a minion heavy rogue deck, which currently does not exist. I guess we'll see if the other decks, if the other cards we're about to look at are good mid-range type minions for rogue. But if they aren't, this card is a 2-star for sure, and that's what we're going to go with. Alright, Spectral Pillager combo, deal damage equal to the number of cards you've played this turn. This card sucks a lot, actually. I will admit I saw a comment about this card, so I was kind of helped out in my theory on this one, but basically the idea here is this card costs 6 mana for a 5/5, so it's understated. So what's the effect? Pardon me, 6 mana, so it's understated. What is the effect? The effect is you're getting some direct damage. Well, there's a 5 mana card, the Weed. Vilespine Slayer, combo destroy minion. So if you play one card before you play this card, it does infinite damage. Not 1 damage per card, infinite damage. If I play Sinister Strike and then follow it up with this card, infinite, and they have a minion with 30 health, it kills the minion. If they have a card with 6 health, it kills the minion. If they have a card with 2 health, which is like realistic, then it's a card. If this card costs like 2 or 3, that would be one thing, because you're not playing it for the stats, you're playing it for the combo effect. So if it was cheap and you could play like a lot of spells, that would be great, but to do more than 4 damage, you need to have a coin. So you could have a counterfeit coin or like a Burglary Bully coin or something like that, and you can maybe exceed 4 damage, or you could play 1 card and get unlimited damage. This card is also understated, but it's a little more understated, but I mean, either of these cards you wouldn't be playing for the stats, you'd be playing it for the effect. And the Vilespine Slayer effect is infinitely, like literally infinitely better. So this card sucks. It also costs the same mana as Gadgetzan Auctioneer, so if you can play a 6 mana card and 4 spells to get the maximum value out of this combo, it's like straight up better to have played Auctioneer and gotten 4 drawn cards. Like, it's really bad. This card is so bad. The effect is interesting, but the mana cost is all wrong for it to be good. And then you bookend it between 2 cards that do everything this card wants to do better. Vilespine Slayer is just straight up a better version of this card and costs 1 less mana. Or if you do have the mana to spend 6 mana plus cast a couple spells because you have coins or what have you, then Auctioneer is just better because it's a win condition. You win the game. If you draw like 6 plus cards off an Auctioneer in a card that's built around Auctioneer, you probably win the game. So yeah, this card is just terrible. It's not only is it not great based on what it says, it's god awful when compared to the alternatives for Rogue. So this is the worst card we've seen so far. It's a 1-star. It actually puts the other cards we've rated 1-star don't deserve to be grouped with this card. It's fucking terrible. Alright, next card is Doomerang. 1 mana, throw your weapon at a minion, deal its damage, and then returns the hand. This card it's pretty good. From what I understand, any effects that have been added to the card take effect. So if you have like poison weapon on your card, it works. If you have the lifesteal on your weapon, that also works. So it's pretty good. The question is, do you want to play this card? Is there a weapon worth playing this card on? That's the question. Because using it on your hero power weapon is probably only good if you're running this card. And it does have the advantage of that you don't have to take the face damage since you're throwing your weapon. So, what do people say about this card? Well, it's really good early, but eventually, because Rogue has no healing, you start to run out of health. So late game, it's kind of bad. Like, if they have a 10-10, in theory, if this is 3 mana, remove a 10-10, but you take 10 damage to the face, and oftentimes as a Rogue, you can't afford to do that. So, this is, if you have a dagger equipped already, it's a 4 mana combo, destroy any minion, which is reasonable to really good. You can even do something like, if you have 2 charges of your weapon, you can put this on there, kill their lower attack minion, and then throw the boomerang at the other minion, so you've destroyed 2 cards with your poisonous weapon, only taking damage from one of them. Returning your hero power to your hand is probably pretty worthless, so drawing a card is kind of irrelevant in that situation. Also, realistically, you're probably not going to have 2 charges of your weapon just sitting around late game. Maybe, but in most cases, that's going to be a 6 mana combo. Is it as good when you think of it that way? It's not as good, but there is definitely potential to get value versus late game decks, even at 6 mana. 6 mana to destroy 2 cards is not terrible by any means, so it's playable. Will it find a home? Maybe, maybe not. I think it's more likely to find a home if people start running a rogue weapon again. Like, because then you're drawing a card. So, Assassin's Blade, or is the new Obsidian Shard card good enough? Is there a weapon in here? I don't. We'll get into that. There is. That card might be worth it. This card is potentially good if Burglar Rogue becomes a thing. There are no Burglar Rogues. There are no Burglar Rogue cards in this set, I don't think. So the fact that it's not a thing right now means it probably isn't a thing when this expansion comes out, because I don't believe there are any Burgle cards in the new set. So, card's good if the new weapon is good, or if people start playing Assassin's Blade again. It's potentially just good anyway. 6 mana, remove 2 cards. If there's a lot of control decks out there, isn't. It's actually not that bad. But is it worth playing? Probably not. We'll see. Also, it doesn't have to be 6 mana. It can potentially be 4 mana if you already have weapon equipped. In that case, it's really good. But will that happen? Who knows? Next card is a 4 mana 5/3 Runeforge Haunter. During this turn, your weapon does not lose durability, or during your turn. So as long as this thing lives, which means it would obviously be way better if it was a 3/5. Is losing durability really a problem? I would say not really for Rogue, because the problem with Rogue is you can only. Assassin's Blade, for instance, is a good card. It's a good card right now. It doesn't need any buffs to be a good card. Why is Assassin's Blade not played very often? Mostly because you just can't take that much face damage as a rogue. So giving your weapons extra swings just isn't that useful. Like a 3/5, yeah, that's pretty cool. You can play this and swing the Assassin's Blade once, and you've gotten pretty decent value out of the card, but you just, like, this thing has 4 durability, and there's a card that exists that has poison on it, which basically makes your weapon do infinite damage when attacking minions, but people don't play it. I mean, just think about that, and that probably answers your question. Like, why is this card bad? Just because extra swings on your weapon is not the problem. That's why. In fact, this weapon would be better if it had more damage and less durability. because swinging 4 times to minions is it's a death sentence for a deck that has to wait until its combo points are ready. Combo pieces, I should say. Sorry. So yeah, swinging an extra time is not the problem. Therefore, this card is statted poorly. So you're paying for the text. Is the text good? No. So it's a 1-star card. It's just not good enough. The effect is, in theory, not bad, but in practice, it's a problem that it covers a problem that rogues don't have. They can swing their weapon enough. Can they live through it? No. This card addresses that. Battle Cry, your hero is immune this turn. It's a 3-mana 3/2. Theoretically, heal for upwards of 4 damage if you kill like a 4/3. I guess you could kill Magma Rager and Hero Pull 5. So yeah, this card sort of addresses that problem. 3/2 for 3 mana is not bad. It's playable. I mean, you'll compare it to Fire War Axe, obviously, which is 2 mana 3/2, and that's considered one of the best cards in the game. If that card costed 1 more, but also healed you for probably an average of like 3, would it be worth it? Yeah, I think it probably would still be worth it. So this card is decent. And this card does make Doomerang better. Because you're all of a sudden, instead of dealing 1 damage, you're dealing 3 damage, which is pretty good. Also, you're getting a card draw because you're getting this card back, which is worth playing on like the hero power weapon. So it doesn't. Whereas the hero power weapon, you probably have to combo it with like lifesteal or some other buff like Deadly Poison or Envenom Weapon to be worth it. I think this is just worth it in general to get the card back. Yeah, so I think this deck is good. This card is good enough to be playable, and that card existing makes this card good. So potentially you'll see this card and this card in like Miracle Rogue to help you control the early game. And I suspect some other rogue. Either rogue's going to be really bad this expansion, or another rogue will develop. Maybe a mid-range rogue. They need something, because Miracle is it's not getting buffed by what's coming out this expansion. So that rogue probably needs a second archetype. I just don't know if the answer is in these cards. But these cards are playable. Maybe a Death Rattle mid-range rogue, because the next card is a Death Rattle supporting card. Draw a card. If it has Death Rattle, cast this again. This card is pretty good. 2 mana, draw 1 card is not awful. It's not good, but it's not awful. If you draw 2 cards, the card is really good. I heard the math on this card was something like you have to have at least 10 Death Rattle cards in your deck for you to have a high enough average where this will get value on average. So right now that deck doesn't exist. It could exist. I still think this card is worth running if Death Rattle Rogue is good. Will Death Rattle Rogue be good? Let's see. They're not getting any Death Rattle cards, I don't think. Okay, so none of these are Death Rattle. This is a Death Rattle that sucks. We'll get over that later. This is not a Death Rattle. Yeah, so they're not getting any. So what exists already? This card. Okay, so maybe a Jade Rogue running these plus 2 of the Sylphids. That copy cards plus Aya with some Shadow Step stuff. Mid-range Jade Rogue with this weapon, the Boomerang card, and maybe the Poisonous card. That might be the deck. Maybe. That's my prediction. If a second rogue archetype develops, it'll be like a mid-range Jade Rogue using bounce effects, these cards, Aya, probably some neutral Mean Streets cards, and then this card, Deadly Poison, and then just your standard rogue fare, like the kinds of rogue cards you put in every deck, like you could put Hallucination in there, or Journey Below probably definitely would put in there. You could put Van Cleef in there, you know, Eviscerate, stuff like that. Mimic Pod, maybe. Maybe N'Zoth if it can go that late. I don't know if it can make it that late. I think you'd want to stay more mid-range, but that's my guess. If a second Rogue archetype appears, and I think it needs to for Rogue to not be terrible, I think it'll be mid-range Jade Rogue. We'll see. And then in that case, I think Roll the Bones is maybe okay in that deck. Maybe. Because it works on both Aya and it works on those little dudes. And if you get the Journey Below, that's another card that, well, you can't draw that card, so let's look at them again. You could run Huckster maybe in that deck. Maybe. Actually, this card's not that bad in that deck because you'd be running the weapons, like we talked about. But I still don't think it's good because you're not looking for more attack. It kind of is like what we're talking about with this effect. You're not really looking for more attack. Maybe, but probably not. So that'll be my prediction, is that if there's a second Rogue archetype that develops, it'll be mid-range Jade. Will it play that card? If that card gets played, it'll be that deck, but I don't know if that deck plays enough Death Rattles for that to be good. But possibly, so I'll give it 2 stars. Unlikely, but if it does have a place, mark my words, it'll be in Jade Rogue. Bone Baron, this card is a 5/5 for 5. Death Rattles add 2 1/1 skeletons to your hand. They cost 1 mana. You have to play them, which means this card is just not very good. It's understated, or yeah, it's technically understated. The Death Rattle is just not very good. They're not spells, so they don't work with Auctioneer. I guess they work with Van Cleef, but just not worth playing. It's just not a good card. It's a 1-star card. Not much else to say about it. It's just, what's the upside? Not much. And if you roll the bones and you get this card, you got this card. Woohoo. I guess it's draw a card then. It's not worth it. Alright, 3 mana, 2/3 combo. Give a friendly minion poisonous. Note that this is give a friendly minion poisonous because I accidentally read it as give yourself poisonous the first time, so that means that you have to have a card that stuck on board the previous turn. Also, you can't play this on... I don't think this card's very good. I think this, again, fits into the situation where it's only... You just saps a better card and Vile Spine Slayer is a better card. That's all I'm going to say. This card's just not very good. Technically speaking, best case scenario... I don't even know what to say. What is the best case scenario? This card's just not very good. Early game minions aren't going to be big enough where poisonous is amazing. And late game... it's just... I just don't see a use for it. I'm going to give this card 1 star. Alright, last card of this particular video is Leeching Poison. Give your weapon lifesteal. This weapon, or this item, this sounds really good. It again addresses the problem we were talking about earlier, where Rogue has a problem with not having enough weapons, but living through having weapons, because they have no healing. Well, this is their new healing spell. It's probably worth it on Assassin's Blade, because that has 4 charges. Is it worth it on any other weapon? Probably not. The new weapon, which is the weapon that I suspect will get run, only has 2 swings. So the only way you get to get double the value out of this is if you played it on turn 5 or later. Is 3 damage a lot of damage on turn 5? Not really. You kind of want to play this on curve. So I just think that this card's unfortunately not good enough. It's not a bad card inherently. I think on the right weapon, 2 mana for lifesteal is worth it. I think the problem with this card is because it's flexible in the sense that it can go on any weapon. They had to price it in a way that was fair when it was put on a deadly poisoned assassin's blade, but still fair when you put it on a non-buffed up shadow blade. So in the situation where you put it on an assassin's blade with deadly poison, this card is actually like way, like, value is through the roof. That's so good. But in the situation where you put it on this, you're probably getting a little less than value. So unfortunately, the swing is too great. If there's a situation where you could play all 3 cards, if you could have a deadly poisoned assassin blade with leeching poison, this card would be insane. I just don't think that situation is practical. It's a 3-card combo that's really way better in the early game than it is late game, and in the early game you can't do it all in one turn. You'd have to wait a turn. At best you could have it out on turn 6. Yeah, just, it's too much to ask for. So I'm going to give this card 2 stars. I don't think it's inherently a bad card, but unfortunately it requires too much setup to be good, therefore it will not see much play. And that's it for Rogue. That's it for this video. This concludes the Paladin, Priest, and Rogue review of the set. The next video will be the Shaman, Warlock, Warrior one, and then the last video, of course, will be the neutrals. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time.